I'm Jenny Langley.
And I'm Mark Langley.
This is our first podcast for 2025. So we wanted to start off with a really good session. And we've picked some questions that have come through from our online members that are all interested in Mark's psychological perspective. So these are questions which are probing into why or when we should be doing things as opposed to the technicalities of it. They're questions which are going to look into how we can make training more positive. When is age a barrier to some of the training that we do? Can you actually change some horses depending on, how old they are, how we can bring a horse back into work, and when we should be exposing our horses' brains to education. So they're quite interesting questions. So stay with us. It's going to be a great podcast. Hello, welcome to Mark Langley's Horsemanship podcast, a podcast helping people to understand their horses better, to provide solutions in a calm, connected way. So, Mark, the first question for today is from Kate, and she's over in the States. She would like to hear your thoughts on her particular Mustang that she's got. She's been taking him really slowly. So he's a 6-year-old Mustang, and she used to be out there on the ranching sort of workhorse, and he was on the obedience framework, and she didn't really want to go down the track of using her old ways. So she's sort of starting him in a different way. She's taking her time, and she is going seriously slowly. She's using your approach. And doing that, she's gone from a horse that had a big spook quite often and was holding a lot of anxiety to having a quiet, calm horse who can think through things much better. But he does still get overwhelmed with new things or sounds. So her question is, because she's been receiving some conflicting advice about this, and you do hear it sort of bantered around, that, should she be exposing him to loads of different things now, or should she have done it when he was younger, when his brain was a bit more malleable? So she's curious to know the difference in, your experience. Should she be, is now good, his brain's perhaps more developed? Is that going to be good for him? Or, maybe young horses should be exposed to a whole load of different things because they can cope with it then, and then they're easier as they get older.
I think I've had this question come up before about, taking our time and taking a nice slow approach to training a horse. And my answer was originally on a similar question like that was effective training is training, not taking it slow. So I'm not saying go fast. I'm saying I've seen a lot of horses train slowly, ineffectively, and years later there's been no real positive change to their ability to process conflicting human environments that have more intensity and stuff like that, and also under pressure they still crack. So because you could be doing slow training and not creating a confident mindset in a horse, and you could be actually doing slow training and almost taking responsibility for the horse's worries and then helping them all the time so they're not helping themselves. There's so many things that we can do wrong in fast or slow training. So I say it's effective training, and sometimes you can speed up training if you're effective in certain areas, and the horse will cope with it. In regarding, the young brain and the older brain sort of thing, it's good if young horses, whilst they're young and they, especially that first year, they've been in environments where things have been a bit tricky and they've had to search things, but they've got a few other horses around them and they kind of figure that they're not going to die and that and stuff like that. And then they start to, process, conflicting environments or, scary environments better because they've kind of dealt with it. But when people give you information about, taking them to more things and doing more and more, I've seen too many horses that have been overloaded. So overloaded because they were taken to too many things and undereducated. So think of it like, someone who's like going to be in the special forces. They need to be trained how to shoot straight, then and a whole bunch of other things, but if they can shoot straight, then they have to learn how to shoot straight with the feeling of people shouting at them, shooting back at them, under lots of stress and pressure. So they have to learn how to still function effectively and process all this stress and not melt down on their job. Okay, so basically horses are much the same as we teach a horse a tool. We teach it to lead, we teach it to follow away, and we have a connection with it. We have that. We teach it to be confident. We teach it to search. We teach it to process, go towards its thoughts, things like that. And then we speed those tools up, lead faster, come on, it's not always the same leading speed, that's just one example, but there's a lot of other examples. And then can you lead or do things steadily through a new environment, okay? And then can you reset when something scares you? Can you let go of that thought, or do you hang on to scared thoughts? Do you see one sheep in the paddock, and then all of a sudden, because you saw one sheep in the paddock, there's ghosts in your head thinking that sheep's going to jump out and eat you, and you fixate on it. So basically, training a good mindset and having good education on a horse is what helps them go into new environments, because we've given them the coping mechanisms, the tools to let go of trouble in their mind and take on a new thought and realize that, and be able to process threats and dangers without thinking it's all personal and stuff like that. Then you can start exposing them to more environments, more intense environments more often. But if you just think exposure, or someone tells you just got to expose them, I've seen, as I said before, I've seen so many troubled, shut down or cooked horses because they were undereducated, didn't have any clue about how to lead softly, didn't have much connection with people, and they were just thrown in the deep end just because the person said, I've got to get used to taking you to shows, so I'm just going to tie you a float at a show for every show that's in the area until I can take you to shows. By the third show, that horse is off its dial. So yeah, good education stays with a horse forever, and then the exposure when they're educated is also an essential thing. You need to expose them. But if your horse is still troubled with education and you speed education up, so little testing things that I do with horses, especially the nervous sort of Mustang horse, is, if I ask for something a little quicker and a little faster, are you okay with the pressure when it goes faster and it's a bit more intense? And are you okay with that, or do you get really troubled? So if you have to always be steady and go slow with the horse and calm, and you can't kind of jump around and you can't run up to your horse and give it a hug because it gets all snorty and frightened because your energy's big, then it's the sort of horse that's going to go into a new environment. If your energy scares it when it gets big, then when you've got 5 other people and other horses, all this in this new environment, it'll be too intense for the horse and it'll get too worried. So before you expose it to new environments, you have to speed the processing up in the horse and start to say, okay, well, you've learned how that I can walk up and catch you. You've learned it's okay to be with me. You've learned it's okay to lead, and whatever you've taught your horse, now do it, as I said, faster. And now I'm not going to stop every time I see your anxiety when I'm walking up to you. I'm just going to jog up to you and put a holder on, and there's no malice in it. I'm jogging up with a smile because I'm so happy to see you. But you're seeing my jogging as a threat. Okay, we've got to fix that. So I would start to speed up all the things that you taught your horse, intensify it a little bit, and see how your horse copes with it. And then you'll find some new things, and then you just go, okay, we've hit a stumbling block here. Let's work on that one, get that fixed, until you can just do the things that the horse already knows, like it's a trained horse, and you don't have to worry about it. Like I said in another podcast, is you do one thing well, or you do one thing and expect a lot. You don't do a lot expecting a little. So it's the same sort of thing. You want to be able to do those things that the horse has already got, but do them more and faster, and expect more, and expect the horse already knows the answer. Not you're teaching the horse, this is a test and you should know the answer. And you start to put those tests on your horse, and you'll very quickly find out where they're at, where you have to work, and then you get to your next phase, and then you'll go again, the next teaching, the next level of teaching, the new things that they don't know, and then the more exposure.
So it's very much about working at your own horse's pace, but doing it very thoroughly. So that education level is a high standard. That makes sense. And it sort of takes the query out of how old they are, because it comes down to the horse and how good that education is. let's stick with age. The next question comes from Georgie from Australia. She's got a warm blood mare that you've seen a few times who has a long-term problem. She gets anxious in the float and she paws, but she's finding that she loads beautifully. She just goes on nervous. Now she's built up doing lots of short trips and things like that, but she's just wondering, is she ever going to change her now that she's 11 years old?
Yeah, like I don't agree with you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but I have a lot of people come to my clinics and they've been doing horsemanship for a long, long time, and they might be, I've had some people come and they're already in their 70s, and I've shown them a whole new concept to horsemanship. For them, it's a whole new concept, and they soaked it up and went, wow, this is great. And they picked it up quite well. Though they had ingrained habits that were a little bit harder to sort of break, they had to be very thoughtful of those habits. So people can do it. Horses can do it. The only thing that I would say is, because there's 11 years of being paranoid about something, whether that be a horse or a person, that's 11 years of having that neuro pathway and dealing with that in a certain way that's become like a habit. So the older horses will have, as I say, it can seem like a less pliable mind, because it's believed that's been a problem for so long that it's hard to say it's not a problem, because it's had that habit in its mind for a long time. So to break that, to get like a foal or a young horse goes into a horse float nervous, going, wow, this is scary. But you can fix that very quickly by softening them and going in a few times, and they go, oh, it's not so bad now. But they only had so many minutes of feeling worried, but then you got to fix it and change because they still got that curious, pliable mind. Whereas the older one, they start to kind of go in there and go, I know this is frightening and I just don't like it. And that's it. You can't change my mind on it. So it is more difficult with some horses because they're habits. So with your horse, I would say the horse is loading, but it's not coping being in a float. Why is it not coping being in a float? Okay, so like I did a lesson with a horse, it's two horses similar at this last clinic. Goes in, pulls back at 100 miles an hour, but doesn't like certain things at the side and things like that. So all I can say to people with float loading problems is, one, get the horse very comfortable with guidance so you can loosen the muscles and take the softest steps in leading and control all the movement without any trouble in the halter and any trouble about being around you. You have to be all the way around your horse, and the horse is not scared at any part of you being at any part of their body or being seen out of any part of their eye. That has to be kind of perfect away from the float. Then when you go to the float, you work on soft maneuverability on the ramp, off the ramp, a bit in the float. Move them inside the bays, turn them, if they're a big float and they can do it, a warm blood maybe wouldn't, because it might be too long. But, a little horse, I'd actually teach them to turn all the way around inside a horse float or trailer, and in the other way, and I'd do things away from the float, like I'd open a gate and I'd push the gate towards the horse, and just touch the horse with the gate, and then move the gate until the horse moves with the gate, and it's not jumping away from the gate. If a horse can't turn around in a stay, or if a horse can't turn around in a tight space and go and have something behind it because it's going, oh crikey, there's something behind me, I'm going to be frightened. I'm frightened about that, and it wants to shoot away or disengage the hip and face it, then they're going to feel that in a float. It's going to be all these constricting pressures from all different areas are going to make it tighten up and get all nervous. So if you can turn them around in there, or find a place where you can, open and close gates on them and back them up to a fence so they touch a fence, a safe fence, obviously not one they're going to kick through wire or something. If you can put a breaching rope on them, if you can long rein them, breeching rope, a butt rope around their rump, and lead them up with that, and put them in long reins and get them to maneuver around in the long reins, and get them so pliable and so able to just go to walls and touch things and just from everywhere. And you can be creative in any environment, finding those little things. Go back to the float, do the same in the float until the horse has been to every part of that float, been close and touched every part of that float with every part of its body, and move softly whilst doing that there's no freeze, and it can move, it can balance, it can wobble. You can bang the float. The other thing as I do is I shake the float and bang it while I'm loading, so that the horse is, because by turning the volume up as you load, like cranking it right up, then the horse goes into that high volume of banging and wobbling and all that sort of stuff. The good thing about turning the volume up is you can always turn it down, but the people who turn the volume down and load the horse, the volume only goes up when they drive off, and then the horse knows what's going to happen. So I try and make the float nearly worse when they're loading, so when they drive off it's better. So actually driving off turns the volume down a little bit, and that really makes them confident, like a soldier who has to shoot when there's bombs going off around them kind of thing, and still shoot straight. That's the idea of the floating.
Next question comes from Pam from Australia. She'd like advice on the best way to start back training after a 2-month break.
Go and test what you've already done. That's what I say. Like, how is your horse trained? What was it doing when you last took the saddle off and turned it out? What was it doing? Where were you at? Remember everything where it was at. Where were the sticky points? Go through the basics of what it already knows. Starts off with leading, guiding, whatever you've done with the horse. Just go through the things before you get on it and see how they work. See how soft your horse is. And yeah, the groundwork would be good, because obviously you're safe on the ground, not just getting on it and go, let's see where you're at, because then you don't know what's going to happen. So is my horse soft, or is it bouncing around? Is it anxious? What do I have to do? Do I got to get more sanded? Is it a bit heavy in the lead and it's not listening to the reins very well, like the lead rein when I'm leading it, so that then maybe it's not going to listen to the reins very well. Gee, since it's been out, when I walk up to it in a hurry, it's a bit more nervous. Maybe being out, it still needs more approach, so I can approach it, or it can approach me, and it can go past me. And, can I move around it? Can it trot up in the lead rope? Can I trot it out on the lead? How's its canter on the lead rope? Can I get it out on a circle? If I put a rope around its belly, is it sensitive all of a sudden without having a saddle on? Or maybe I've got to work on the belly rope a little bit and get it loose and soft and just comfortable at that girth again, and maybe leading with a belly rope. And then, I picked up the saddle blanket and the horse wasn't that frightened of it when it went out. Maybe I've got to work on that again. So I just think you got to look at what the horse knows, what you've already taught it, go back, address the groundwork things are those things that you've done. And if the horse gets back into a soft eye, feeling good about things, feeling comfortable, well, you must be on the right path, and what you taught the horse has stayed in there, and you just had to remind it a little bit, and and do all that before you ride it. Really, that's all I would do was test what they know, and if it's nowhere near as good as what it was, then just re-educate those things that you did teach it, and before you ride.
And the last question from Christine from the States. This is about making training positive. So she's heard you talk a lot about making a horse feel good with our training. She's been working through your challenge series. Sometimes she feels like her horses don't really like the training. So she's wondering, do you have any tips on what she might be doing wrong?
Yeah, so making a horse feel good in training when it's out in a 200-acre paddock with good grass and good mates and friends and all that sort of thing. Hard to compete, really, isn't it? Not hard to compete if you got a horse that lives in the stable, and then you say, hey, let's go out for a ride in the paddock, and while we're out in the paddock, we might stop and eat some grass and have a bit of a roll, and then the horse in the stable goes, oh, I don't mind education because it gets me out of the stable. But the horse that lives in the sort of the natural wild environment, trying to say, hey, this is a good idea, is obviously going to be a little harder but horses, I find, are very, they're very, I'm trying to think of the word, they associate with the moment that they're in. They don't just go, oh, I wish I was out there. I have to do this. They're actually, oh, I'm doing this right now. They're like sometimes toddlers. Oh, I'm over and doing this right now. So if you can make them feel good with you, and they trust you, and then they follow a lead well, and they trust the pressure. They're not frightened of the pressure. The pressure, helps them search. It kind of guides them. It gives them clarity when they're in new places. Then they can, in general, feel quite good about education. And I've seen a lot of people that had some pretty troubled horses come to my clinics, and 12 months later, they've come back to another one and they've been working on stuff. And you can see that horse generally is just happy being around them, and it's got a soft eye when they're riding it, and it's not bothered by much, and it's not hooking onto the other horses because it doesn't like the education. And to me, the eye and the movement and the breathing and the senses of the horse don't look any different than when it's happy out with its mates. So the look of the expression of the horse doesn't look any different. So to me, that's an indicator that the horse is feeling good in that moment, and it's just as feeling good in that moment as it was out in the paddock. So yes, horses can feel good about information, guidance, and being with us, and being ridden and stuff like that. But the keys, and with your horse, by the sounds, there's a bit of sourness in there. You find there's a bit of resentment, things like that. Lack of clarity can provide a lot of resentment in horses. Driving pressure, not allowing them to go towards their thoughts, constantly looking at where the pressure is, and not having proper thought chains when you add pressure, whether that be the leg pressure or the rein pressure, that can keep trouble in a horse. So basically, you've got to identify the troubles in your horse and what causes the trouble, and then you fix that. So say, for instance, I walk up to a horse and I'm just walking up normally with energy, and then it looks troubled. I go, well, that's a problem, and I don't want my horse to look troubled and then put a holder on that troubled horse because I didn't fix the walking up to the horse part of it. And then when I put the holder on, the horse shuts down a bit because the holder's like an emotional hobble. And then I put the saddle on the horse and I take it for a horse ride and wonder why I get bucked off. Well, it's a whole combination of putting trouble in the horse till finally the worry cup fills up. So when you make sure when you're watching your horse, it feels like it's open and searching and making decisions for itself, and then your guidance or the putting a boundary in place, the horse is okay and it figures out things itself. It's not just forced, pushed, and anxiety getting held in it. And if they don't like us, they have to like us. So somehow in your connection and you're being with your horse and stuff like that, you have to be more present. You have to be a good leader when you're around a horse. You can't be fragile and anxious. You can't be sort of always kind of changing your mind and that. Otherwise, the horse, when the horse is in a herd, follow a horse or go with horses that give them something that maybe they don't have, and that could be a bit more confidence in the in the presence of danger and stuff like that. So you have to be, as I say, clear. You have to have a feeling of strength, that and stability. So they feel that they can rely on you, and they don't have to watch your back all the time because you're the weak link kind of thing. So that has to be taken on board as well, and they can feel very good about information, but really look at how you're operating your horse and when that anxiety comes up, and try and identify the pieces that cause it. Don't just sort of go, oh, the horse is defensive and angry. When does it happen? Is it when I'm walking up in the paddock? Is it when I put the holder on? Is it what's causing it? Is it when I start to girth them or something? There's things in there all the way that'll be saying, I'm not happy with this. And then we've got to go, okay, how can I help the horse over that hurdle? And not just kind of pile things up and keep going until the horse is feeling really bad about everything.
Have you found that when you do piece those break it down and you find the little troubled areas, you fix those little troubled areas. Have you found that you can generally get a much more contented horse, even though they've come out from the paddock, they've left their paddock mates, they are actually okay with training? Have you ever come across a horse that is still resents it, or does it literally just come down to those pieces of the puzzle and making them each one comfortable?
Yeah. So basically, a horse will come out of a paddock after a long spell in a paddock, and because you've taken it away from its stability that's had day in, day out for a long time, there will be an instability in the horse and an anxiety and things like that, especially if it's not done a lot with people, as a younger horse or whatever. A lot of horses get separation anxiety and resentment because they feel bad about training, and that makes them want the herd more than the horse that feels okay. But if a horse comes away from the herd and feels generally connected and safe with us, okay about the information that we're providing, and we can guide it. And as I say, they go back to that feeling of safety with us all the time. If we're not troubling them and keeping stress in them by what we're doing, and they feel safe with us, they can let go of the herd and be happy with us, because horses are generally quite curious in a lot of situations, and there's a lot of horses that I think that come out of a small paddock and don't mind the stimulant. They quite enjoy the stimulant. They're thinking and they're active and they're doing things, and it can be quite enjoyable actually going out and doing stuff with people. It's just when our ego gets too big and we want to hammer that horse for our goals, like our ribbons, our prizes, our competitions, and we have to be careful. Those are the horses, the performance horses, that start to get very sour because it's been more training the horse for what the judge wants to see, not necessarily training the horse to get it to feel good the whole way through. So and that's really tough, But there's some people I'm working with that some more online too that they're really working hard on had a troubled horse, and there's one little horse that I've been watching, and she's doing a lot of rein stuff, starting to get some nice turns and putting more on him every time she's riding him. But he still always looks happy and he's going along about his business, and he doesn't look like he's troubled by it. So, and because he's empowered, he's trust the pressure, trust the person, and he doesn't swish his tail. He doesn't get sort of angry. He just goes on about his business. And whereas before that, he was a really shut down, stressed horse. And so more and more I'm seeing horses not feeling much, and she can still go out in the paddock and catch him. Like, he's got a choice. Like, he's it's not yarding him up and sort of going, he'll come up to her and go, hello, oh, what, we've got to hold her on, right? We've got to sail on, let's go. And he goes off on his little training adventure, and then he goes back with his herd. And really, I think the difference in feeling is very, not there at all.
That's really reassuring to hear. We'll leave it there for this week. Thank you so much for their answers, Mark. And thank you, as always, to our amazing members who have sent the questions through. We've got a lot more coming through this year. So we'll look forward to talking to you next week.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, everybody.
If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to like it, share it, or leave us a comment. It all helps in reaching new ears and helping more horses. Learn more of Mark Langley's unique insights and how you can positively affect your horse's training ability and mental welfare. For just the price of a couple of coffees, you can access his online horsemanship training videos. Head to marklangley.com.au.